So, let's talk about something big that's happening with the US government's money, and by extension, your money. We're about to see the end of the government paper check as we know it, thanks to a huge push to take America's bank account fully digital. I mean, who hasn't been there? You're waiting on that tax refund, you keep checking the mailbox, and that little thought creeps in, what if it just never shows up? Well, it turns out that exact worry is a huge reason behind the massive change we're diving into today. So, why the big breakup with paper checks after all these years? It feels like they've been around forever. But as it turns out, relying on paper in our super digital world is creating some pretty major headaches. First off, let's just talk about the money. Just to keep the old paper check system running, printing them, mailing them, digitizing the records, it cost taxpayers $657 million. And that's just for fiscal year 2024. That is a staggering amount of cash for what is essentially outdated tech. But it's not just about the cost, right? It's also about risk. The Treasury Department's own numbers show that a paper check is 16 times more likely to get lost, stolen, or messed with compared to a simple electronic payment. And with mail theft becoming more and more common, that risk just keeps growing. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. The executive order that's driving this whole thing lays it out perfectly. It calls out, and I'm quoting here, unnecessary costs, delays, and risks of fraud, lost payments, theft, and inefficiencies. Basically, the government's official position is that paper checks are just too slow, too expensive, and way too insecure. Okay, so with the problem pretty clearly defined, the government has come up with a very direct solution, an official mandate to go all in on digital. The official directive is called Executive Order 14247. It was signed on March 25, 2025, and its mission is crystal clear: transition every single dollar flowing to and from the federal government over to electronic methods. Now, before we go any further, the order makes a really crucial point to clear up any confusion. This is not about creating a central bank digital currency, or a CBDC. Think of it this way. They're upgrading the pipes, not changing the nature of the water flowing through them. It's about modernizing how we pay, not what we pay with. So the big question is, how does the government actually plan to pull off a transition this massive? Shifting from paper to pixels is no small feat. Let's get into the game plan. And listen, the timeline here is, well, it's fast, really fast. The order was signed in March. By June, every federal agency has to turn in their plan for going paperless. And then, the final deadline, September 30th, 2025. That's it. After that day, paper checks from the government are officially a thing of the past. So what takes the place of that old paper check? Well, you're getting a major upgrade. We're talking about all the modern options you'd expect. Good old direct deposit, of course, but also things like prepaid cards, debit and credit card payments, digital wallets like the ones on your phone, and even real-time payment systems. And here's a key thing to get. This is a two-way street. It's not just about how you get your money from the government, like a tax refund. It's also about how you pay money to the government. So things like paying your taxes or any federal fees, that's all going electronic too. But, a fair question is, what about people who aren't quite ready for a fully digital financial life? Or what about folks who don't even have a bank account? Well, the executive order actually builds in some really important exceptions for those cases. See, this isn't some harsh one-size-fits-all rule. The Secretary of the Treasury can actually grant waivers. They can make exceptions for people who don't have access to banking, for certain emergency payments, and even for specific national security operations. So there's a safety net built in. Okay, so let's bring this all home. We've gone through the why, the what, and the how. But what does this transition really, truly mean for you personally? Well, the good news is they're not just going to flip a switch and wish everyone good luck. The plan has three key parts. First, they're launching a huge public awareness campaign to make sure everyone knows this is coming. Second, they're going to provide actual support to help people get set up with these new digital options. And third, they're teaming up with banks and consumer groups to tackle the challenge for people who are unbanked. So when you boil it all down, when you strip everything else away, this entire initiative is really about hitting three big goals. Making government payments faster so your money gets to you sooner, making them safer to cut way down on fraud and theft, and making the whole system way more efficient, which, at the end of the day, saves us all taxpayer money. And that leaves us with this one last thought. I mean, for years now, most of us have been banking online, paying with our phones, and managing our money digitally. So the real question here might not be whether this is a radical change, but whether the government is simply and finally catching up to the way the rest of us already live our lives.